Hi, this is Bill Foote, and this is MBA 645's Special Topics. We're live in the spring of 2024, February. Happy St. Valentine's Day today and Ash Wednesday. We're doing strategic management science, really strategic decision analytics, and really the subtext as we've been doing for the last several weeks. We're now into week 5 of 7 weeks. We're really doing system dynamics. But at the head of all of this, and we'll see if this works. At the head of all this are questions. And what you see in front of you right now are several questions that we could be asking of anything we've done in the course right now. These are just a few. For example, why should or do adopters in a potential market stay or switch? We can analyze that. We can begin to figure that out. Does the use of forced labor in our supply chain affect investment decisions? Well, interesting question that we are going to raise. We are going to be looking at a benefits corporation, its structure, the kinds of decisions within it, within a multi-criteria decision-making framework. We will be looking at the geometry of that decision soon, because there is a geometry involved. It's going to look very much like think of a triangle. Think of a triangle with 3 legs supporting a point. And the point is this very point right here. What is the end that we seek? What is the good that we desire? What is the question we want answered? Okay, so that's where we're going to go with this. As you can see, I have a couple of other things here that you might add, and that's a great exercise. Let's call that exercise 1 for week 5. Add questions along the lines of project rework. Quality comes into that. Along the lines of the consortium and the shared services that we talked about in week 5, or the key partners and IP sharing. There's all sorts of ways in which we could begin to create questions. It all begins with questions. Every language on the planet, at least going back 3,000-4,000 years, has a question format. What is it? Why is it? How is it? What's it made of? What are we doing here? All right. There's an anatomy of something that I call, it has been called for this for a long time. This is Socratic reasoning. And in the Middle Ages, it got to be quite a form. Yes, the form, the shape of things. There's definitely a shape of things here. And this is a CLD, a closed loop diagram of something called the Quaestio Disputatae. It got to this form, and there is a way again of going through the forest, the wood of a question to get to an answer and eventually to an action. We'll go through this in a minute. But this is where we're starting for the next few minutes. So again, as always, strap yourself in. Given a question, if we look at the anatomy of a question, we pose a question. So question is posed. Put a question mark there. That's our first entity, if you will, in the CLD. Well, the first thing that a lot of people do is they say, well, wait a minute. Is it? uh, do adopters care about whether there is forced labor in the supply chain? Well, it seems not. That's the next thing. And these are the objections. It's usually formulated as it seems not. We're always leaving things open. And we might list several objections. There might be objection 1. It seems not because. And objection 2, which might be related to objection 1. Number 2. Let's make a nice number 2. We can do Arabic system writing. And we could do this forever. But these two might be linked. One might lead into the other. Another might lead in that way. Okay, so in our way of thinking, systems thinking, we're thinking about even posing the question and framing eventually answers. Well, one of the other things that can happen is maybe it does. And maybe there's a couple of maybe. That might be maybe it does 1, maybe it does 2. So you can imagine a meeting where you have objectors on the one end and the maybes on the other end. Now, this is the horns of the dilemma. We now have a dilemma. Some people think one way, some people think another way. Should we expand the market in this region with this particular product line and this workforce and sales force, the sales mix, the product mix, the geographical mix? Some will say no, we're stretching ourselves too far. We don't belong there. It's just too costly. It's too risky. And others will say, well, no, wait a minute, hang on. There might be other things we can do. Again, we can do all of that. The whole series of objections and the whole series of maybes, we can aggregate those to some extent. And all of these will lead to a management response, a team response. And I've mentioned it maybe once, maybe twice. I'm going to mention it again and again. There are 2 organizations on the planet. There are other organizations on the planet. The entire Confucian Mandarin system is a good example. But every culture has something some institution, some approach which transmits itself from generation to generation to generation, leaving out the bad stuff, putting in the good stuff, leaving some things up in the air, questions posed. To business organizations, in the West, and they have spread throughout the globe. One is the Jesuits, well over 450 years of global business enterprises called schools. Um, the Paraguayan reductions, where they created uh, agricultural communities among the indigenous in Paraguay. Uh, they were suppressed heavily because they went against the interests of other people, landowners, the conquistadores. They weren't quite the conquistadores at the time, who uh, did not want that. Okay, it was not in their economic interest. The interest of the Jesuits and the people were to keep us going as a people. Um, the Benedictines, since about 500 in the Christian era, the Benedictines, that's a long time, since 500, so you can count, a couple of millennia involved in that. To uh, again look at what is going on. And we keep going on. Management response leads to management action, but one of the things that happens before that, we'll give it an arrow down here to management action, decisions, the name of this course in reality, and then the system of that. And before we even get to that action, which is all of the models that we've been actually building, management response feeds back and gives rise to, well, here's how I handle the objections. Now, the maybes, there's a possible flip back here as well. And notice it goes round and around. So this will feed a negative to the management response. This will feed a positive to the objections to the management response. The objections are a negative in this model. These are all positive from the point of view of the objector. And they can either feed or not. This could either be a plus or a minus, a plus or a minus. Just completing all of the different ideas inside of a closed loop diagram of the whole situation. Again, we have the horns of the dilemma here, and then management's response and management's action. Management's response to the objections, which feed further back into the objections. Now that feedback is going to be a very strong positive. So that is positive reinforcing feedback. This looks a bit, that's positive reinforcing this, but if you just took it from the objector by itself, the pluses overwhelm the minuses, and in terms of loops, we have another reinforcing loop here. Okay. What limits this? That's a good question. Maybe you can think about the limits to this, but I don't see any real limits yet, right? And that's the notion of transcendence, where we are expanding vertically now. I'm sorry, horizontally now and vertically. That was before. Just to get a little visual here. And that might be a whole new loop going up to a new future. And this is the transcendent notion of what we're trying to do. There's one other notion inside of this, and that is the notion of we might have a manager 1, who communicates with manager 2, and this is the open loop part, communicates with manager 3, all using this framework. Managers are talking to each other. But if we close the loop like this, I mean, otherwise, managers are talking to themselves. It's not even, they are the market. No, they don't care about anything else. It's a very dictatorial way of looking at things. It's actually pretty oppressive. Telling without allowing for reciprocation is also oppressive. Okay, so again, using this Quaestio framework to produce a dialogue. And trading is kind of a real basic dialogue. We can begin to reconceive how we approach things. So we're going to have to go through a Quaestio process for weeks 6 and 7 for sure. We could have gone through this before, but better to have something to talk about. And we have been talking about a lot of things. And here we are. Again, does the split between renewable and non-renewable sources affect adoption? Oh, I don't know. We're going to look at that one today. Does the use of forced labor, we did that. Does open innovation affect labor choice and whether or not we use renewable capital? We're beginning to get some data from markets that that's indeed the case. Does open innovation affect product adoption? Another very important aspect that we can be asking, and again, exercise 1 is formulate a Quaestio Disputatae for project rework. And we might conceive of project rework perhaps as something that is the production side of our inventory models. Like this. This is where I'm going in the very next video, where we have looked at, that should be PA, you can't even see that. There we go. You have the potential adopters, the market, making purchases. We have adopters, therefore. But the adopters don't get anything until it actually arrives. Okay, so it might be instantaneous in your inbox. It might be you have to go and visit the plant to make sure that you have the keys and walk through it. Yeah, fulfillment. On time, in full is the usual idea, and service levels might be a way of looking at that. Notice the feeding back, the feedback here. We can imagine similar feedbacks like this between A and F, between adopters and fulfilled adopters. And then there's the whole business of switching out. Okay, so we can add these elements pretty quickly, and you can formulate. There are questions that really are presupposed in these formulations. And the production side might be over here on inventory. And this is production labor feeding this. And you have a whole model of this. We have a whole model of this. But wouldn't it be interesting to put each one of these boxes is called a sector, remaining, accomplished, somehow related to rework, where quality of that which is produced and held in inventory here, so this would be production, okay, this would be hiring. So we'll be putting some of this together, but I'm asking you in exercise 1 to think about this. This whole area down here is just something else that we have to look at, and that will be really the next video, where we have a non-renewable resource and K for capital, Kapital of Deutsch, and renewable. You know, we're growing soy and we plant it, and here it is. There we go. Okay, renewable resource. How does that feed back? And I'm getting the idea here of a supply affected price, the bid versus the ask. This is the ask, the asking price. Then that behooves us to have over here a bid price, so that we can have a trading operation, an exchange that relates to these managers in maybe 3 different markets, and for markets and for managers and for all of us, whatever, talking with one another. And there's a whole notion of what I call the anthropology of gift. And I did not make this up, but I am applying it to the management sphere. That is something kind of new, related to this way of imagining the shape of management. This, to me, is the shape of management, with transcendence. But the notion that the gift of 1 to 2 and the gift back of 3 2 to 1, it's a network now, a connected network. The notion of gift typically has also the notion of not expecting a return. Okay, so you make you make a trade, you and another trader. Yeah, okay, you give money back and forth, you get the product, okay, fine, and the money goes out of your PayPal or whatever. All right, there's a trade that goes on, and promises made, but there's something beyond that to make that happen. We might call it trust, faith. Things just don't happen, all right? We have a transactional component in our culture, caused by we're doing it all on our own and that's it. There's nothing outside of us. Okay, the problem is we can't explain ourselves. Most biologists, most quantum physicists already, almost every mathematician understands that. There's something beyond that we're not talking about here. And this anthropology of gift is getting at that residual. And sometimes the residual is greater than the trade, much greater than the trade. And that's, again, another way of thinking. I'm going to leave you with these thoughts and with the idea that your next job is to think about this whole structure from the point of view of one of these questions, and actually then formulate your own question. You can put you know, a little box full of objections over here, little bullet points, bunch of maybes over here, again, bullet points, ways of structuring it, and then how all of this becomes management's response. The management response might come from yet another something from the outside of this whole system, something exogenous. So all of this is endogenous, but here is an exogeneity. Okay, I'll leave you with that. And again, thank you very much for your kind attention. Be sure to encourage each other daily while it is today. Do not delay. Oh, yes, we're going to have to talk about delays in this system. Yeah, many delays in this system. How long does this take? How long does this take? How long does that take? Yeah, delays will create oscillations. That will bounce back and forth. That'll be great if we wanted to get into the logic of the form of management that I am proposing here to you. That I'm going to leave you with. Okay. Take care and have a great day, and try to enjoy one another as much as possible. Take care. Oh, within bounds, of course.